This edition of MacVoices is sponsored by Smile, the makers of world-class software like PDF Pen for Mac, PDF Pen Pro for Mac, PDF Pen for iPhone and iPad, PDF Pen Scan Plus for iPhone and iPad, Text Expander for Mac, and Text Expander for iPhone and iPad. Learn more about all their great products at smilesoftware.com. And by the MacVoices Dispatch, our weekly newsletter, to stay up to date on all the MacVoices news. Subscribe from our front page or at macvoices.com/newsletter. Welcome to the MacJury on MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, we've convened not exactly an emergency, but a bit of an urgent MacJury to talk about some of Apple's recent developments and the development that as we record this today, the announcement, or I guess the revelation that Apple is getting out of the wireless router business, which seems to fall in line with a lot of things they've been doing. But we wanted to talk over the implications of it and kind of why it might be happening and what this might mean for the future. Couldn't think of two better people to talk about it with, though, than our panel today, so let's just get to it. First up, Mr. Mark Fuccio. Mark, it's good to have you as always.
Chuck, it's a true delight to be here, and look forward to a great conversation with you and Jeff.
As always. Mark, where can people find you when you're not here sharing your wisdom?
So, two places. Best and easiest place to reach me is Twitter, where I'm at MarkFuccio. The other place that's best to reach me is through LinkedIn.
Great. Well, it's always good to have you.
Thank you, Chuck.
And as Mark alluded to, we have Mr. Jeff Gamet with us, back from a cruise, rested, ready, and anxious to talk, I'm sure.
And, Chuck, it's always awesome to get to be on a show with you. So I love that I'm here. Thanks for calling me up.
I always appreciate you showing up.
Mm-hmm. So, I should tell people where I'm from, because that's what you're about to ask me, right?
That's exactly. It's like you're reading my mind, Jeff.
It is, and we should really talk.
Yeah.
Just saying. Anyhow, I'm over at the Mac Observer, which is macobserver.com, along with a bunch of other really awesome writers. And I'm on shows like Apple Context Machine and Mac Observer's Daily Observations. And I'm on Twitter. I'm Jay Gamet. And I guess I'm a lot of places, aren't I?
It seems like it, but they're all a lot of fun. So,
yeah, that's true. I'm all about having fun.
All Jeff, all the time.
The stories we could tell.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, we're not going there. We're not going there. We already did it earlier. Jeff, you're the one that was kind of giving us an update here on the Apple wireless router situation, and I'll ask you to maybe just share that a little bit so we set a baseline for things.
Okay, so we got the news today that Apple has pulled their engineering team that was handling all of their wireless services, wireless networking services, and has reassigned them to other projects. And this isn't an official Apple announcement, but the news came through Mark Gurman at Bloomberg, and Mark has a really good track record with insider sources giving him legit information. So I think this is real, that Apple really has pulled their engineering team from the Airport Extreme, Airport Express, and Time Capsule. I don't know how long ago they did it, but based on what we've been seeing for their products, geez, I mean, this could be something that happened like a year ago, and we're just hearing about it, but more likely it's just recent. So that doesn't mean you can't buy an Airport Extreme or a Time Capsule anymore. What it means is that eventually you won't be able to. So what I think is happening is that Apple is doing with the Airport product line exactly what they did with the Thunderbolt display. And they just quietly pull the team working on it. And then over time, product availability starts to dwindle. And then eventually they're just gone from the stores. And at a future Apple product announcement event, we'll see a different wireless access point on stage that Apple is promoting and saying, hey, this is what we're using right now, just like they did with the LG 5K displays that that were shown off during the Touch Bar MacBook Pro launch.
Okay, so first of all, everyone knows that we don't typically talk about rumors, and this is not really a rumor. This is a piece of credible information. So let's just assume that it is, because I'm not. Jeff, correct me. Does Apple ever really come out and say, "Oh, we've disbanded this team," as far as press releases?
No, but there are times when they will announce or confirm that a product line is being discontinued.
Okay, so we don't have that yet, but
no, and I don't think we will. It'll just be like the Thunderbolt display, where it's just gone.
Okay, so for purposes of this discussion, we're going to assume that it is an accurate report. Mark, I know you had a couple reactions to it, and I wanted to make sure I give you a chance to dive in there with, is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? What does it mean? And all of that.
Okay, before we should do that, we should recognize that we're stipulating it's true. So I think I can add the title of fact-based fiction writer to my resume, because we're going to speculate on
awesome
on some things. So classically, one of the reasons a company gets out of a business or may discontinue a product line is for one of two reasons. The first is the cost and the returns of the product no longer meet their internal expectations. The other is that they may believe that they have greater opportunities elsewhere, and they'll marshal and channel their resources in different places. With Apple, I think it's probably a little bit of the latter. The reason I say that is, they're famous. They have a functional organization, i.e., they have a marketing department, an engineering department, a support department, et cetera. Whereas companies more classically will structure from a divisional perspective, so they'll have different divisions that cozy up and get close to particular customer sets. So Apple has gone against that. So I'm sure that between Luca and Tim, they're well aware of what the return of some of the products are. They're also probably very much more conscious on what their future expectations are of other products. What they are, there's all sorts of rumors out there, but I would speculate that those are some of the factors that they've got to look at. Where are their employees and their engineers being deployed, and where would they get better return out of them? I think the other thing is maybe in the past, it's we can shed a tear, sentimentality, because Apple was first to market with Wi-Fi built into their computers. That was then, this is now, and it's pretty much standard. So maybe there's an argument to be made that Apple doesn't add value, significant, user experience value, like they once did, and therefore that's a natural reason for them to redeploy their people. As with Apple, we have to go forward, a couple of years, and then look back, and it'll become clear what is happening on this date in November of 2016.
Jeff, I want to make sure I give you a chance too. You were kind enough to sort of summarize the situation for us, but what's your reaction to it?
My reaction is, really, it took this long? I'm not concerned that Apple has killed the product line. And I know when I say they've killed the product line, I'm kind of jumping the gun a little bit, because we can still buy airport products. But when Apple made the first base station, they had to make the first base station, because otherwise they were selling us an iBook that they said, look, wireless networking. And there was nothing that consumers could use to connect that wireless laptop to their network. So Apple had to make the base station. And they did, and it was great. And they improved it over the years, and they've reached a point where now they're making, with the Airport Extreme, a really good and really solid piece of hardware. I mean, the components are top notch. The problem is that as far as features go, it's fallen behind the other products that are available on the market, and it's a product that Apple is having to invest resources in, and they don't need to anymore. So, Mark, I think you got it right. Apple's been looking at the big picture, and they don't see that the airport product line is a core part of their business anymore. And so they're doing exactly what they ought to in this situation, even though it's a little sad, and they're letting it go. And I think that that if Steve Jobs were alive, and I hate doing that, well, if Steve was alive sort of thing, this would have already happened. Like, this would have been a year ago. I think it took longer for Apple to get to this place because Steve wasn't here to say, kill it. But they've gotten to that place now.
Yeah, I would think that. I think the last time they were updated was 2013 with the AC routing standard. Since then, to my knowledge, there isn't a lot more coming out in the Wi-Fi world. So I think that is quite telling. And again, it just doubles back down. I think maybe in many ways for Apple, it is mission accomplished, and it's time to move on to other things.
Well, at this point, the new thing that's really compelling in the Wi-Fi market is the mesh network product that's being made by several different companies. So unless Apple really wants to invest a lot of resources into retooling their airport product line to be a mesh network, then they're done. Mission accomplished, just like you said. And there's products like eero.
That and Google.
Yes, yeah, and so you can go off of Amazon or in some electronic stores, pick up an eero kit today, and it sets up crazy simple, and it does the things right out of the box that an Airport Extreme is fully capable of, but simply can't because Apple won't give us those features. So you have QoS, which is happening just dynamically without you having to do anything on an eero mesh network, and we don't have that on an Airport Extreme. And it's anyhow. The point is that Apple has let that product line fall behind, and they're going to let it fall away, because it's not a space, I think, that they feel is part of their core mission.
So I would have a related question. Yeah. How many days, let's make a bet, how many days will it be until we hear somebody, a financial analyst or someone else speculate that, gee, what Apple should do with all its billions in cash is it should buy eero?
Yeah. Oh, I'm surprised we haven't seen that already.
Yeah, what time is it? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So my guess is that before the end of this week, there will be at least one analyst or pundit that is seriously pushing for Apple to buy eero, and Apple's not going to do it. Right. I don't think it's a good business move for Apple to buy that company. Let eero do their thing. Apple can do their thing, and then maybe at a future Apple event, we'll see eero products on stage for wireless networking, and it'll be just like with the LG display, where Apple says, "Here's a really great option for your MacBook Pro," and with the eero thing, they'll say, "Hey, here's a really great Wi-Fi network solution for you."
I can think of a couple reasons that this made perfect sense. The mesh networking thing is one, Jeff. I don't know what's involved in taking an Airport Extreme and upgrading it for mesh networking,
software.
Quality of service. Right, quality of service.
Lots of software.
Lots and lots. The other thing I think that would potentially contribute to this is that it seems like now, if you sign up for an internet service provider, they almost universally give you something that has Wi-Fi access capability. Now, that it doesn't mean it's going to be as good or it's going to hold up as well or have all the features, but for a lot of folks, it's good enough. That's fine. We upgraded to a quality of service router at the office, a Netgear. I don't mind saying it. And when I look at the interface for the Netgear, I keep hearing your colleague at the Mac Observer, Dave Hamilton, talk about how the router interfaces are getting better and better. Yeah, they are. But that's for somebody that's a router geek. It is still not terribly easy or make a lot of sense. And unfortunately, the support sites and the support services are significantly lacking. Because you're going to want to do a couple things. You're going to want to probably open ports, and that in itself can be a challenge. You're going to want to set passwords. You're going to want to do all those things. And it's not like an airport. It's not nearly as easy to do as with an airport. So I look at it and I think, okay, so I get a wireless access point for free from, let's just say, Comcast or Time Warner or whomever, or I spend significantly more than an airport and get the EOS. Okay, so isn't there room for a middle ground somewhere? And that
Sure.
And that would be Apple?
I think that's actually Logitech now.
Really?
And I know. And I'm surprised to hear the words come out of my mouth too. But Logitech has made really good strides, really good improvements in their interfaces. And so setting up a Logitech access point is much easier than it used to be. Their web interface is much more understandable. And so I think what we're going to see is, like you said, you have the base tier where your ISP is giving you your cable modem with Wi-Fi built in. And then you're going to have the middle ground where you have companies like D-Link and
Netgear.
Thank you, Netgear, and so we'll have these companies, Linksys, making their middle of the road products, and then we'll have the high end, which I have to split into two parts. The first part is like the eero products, where you're getting this mesh thing with drop dead simple setup, really easy interfaces to work with, and then you're going to have the more commercial side, where you're getting the routers and access points that you put in a larger business, that you put into hotels, stuff like that.
So Apple could buy Logitech. It's only valued, its market cap is, $4.2 billion.
Well, that's assuming Belkin's ready to sell. But yeah, I mean, they could buy something like that. I don't think they want to.
I know. I agree. I don't think they need to. I mean, actually, thinking back on that MacBook event, I think this is the first time that I really clearly recall Apple really embracing in a partnership type of way another vendor for other products. In the past, they've had them in their stores, but they're sort of unsung heroes. But they were on stage, and they had their company name and product name coming out of Phil Schiller's mouth. So hopefully that is a little bit of Tim Cook of making Apple cooperate and play better with other companies, sort of like he's doing with IBM and Cisco in the enterprise area.
The last time I remember Apple doing something like this, with third-party product on stage, and they're essentially endorsing it, was when they did the Soundsticks. Remember that the clear Soundsticks, and it came with the clear egg subwoofer thing. And actually, I don't even remember who made that now. But they had that on stage for at least one of their Mac product events, and they made
Harman,
a point
maybe?
of saying,
Yeah, Harman Kardon.
Was it Harman?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Because if you look behind me, they're I've got the Soundsticks back there.
Oh yeah. Yep. There
Yeah.
they are. Yeah. Apple promoted those on stage at some event.
I have to.
But that was a long time ago.
I have to tell you, this discussion is not going the direction I thought it would. I thought there would be a bit more alarmist sentiment. And I guess maybe I'm feeling that way. First of all, I think a lot of us have become comfortable living in a primarily, if not exclusively, Apple ecosystem. And for some reason, I don't see monitors as part of that. It doesn't bother me to have a third-party monitor. But I start to get concerned with the quality of some of these others. But more importantly, I guess the reason that I expected the conversation to go differently is that last week we had Sal Soghoian come out and say that his position has been eliminated, and he's been the automation guru for AppleScript for forever.
That concerns me.
Yeah, we have that. We have, as Mark alluded to, I believe he was the one that said about the LG monitors, so they've gotten out of the monitor business. Are we seeing a reduction in the Apple product line? And if so, is that a good thing?
Yes, we are seeing a reduction in the product line. And I think, yes, it's a good thing. You remember when Steve Jobs came back to Apple and their product line was just a hot mess. And Steve just started axing stuff. And I think where we are today, the product line isn't a hot mess this time, but it's confusing. And there's this whole thing with Apple is having to put a pointed focus in far more places than they actually need to. So I think it's good that their senior management is evaluating these different products and is coming to the conclusion that they don't need to be in the product line anymore. Therefore, the displays are gone. Airport Extreme is going away. And hopefully by streamlining the product lines and then focusing more on the stuff that they are making today, we won't have future problems like we're having with the AirPods. They were supposed to come out in October. I'm betting February.
Well, I mean, okay, that's a little bit of a non sequitur, but
of course it is.
Point accepted that they need to double down. I mean, the way I look at it is, as I said, I think for Wi-Fi, I really think it's mission accomplished. You know, they formed a market, they're exiting gracefully. To your point, Chuck, some of the other things that do concern me is, you know, their absolute glacial pace of, you know, updating, you know, the Mac. I mean, Tim Cook and they all come out and say, oh, the Mac has a special place in our heart. Well, prove it, you know, and maybe this year is particularly challenging due to, you know, Intel roadmap, but it felt like, you know, the Touch Bar launch event was incomplete. You know, I think we had 1 out of 3 courses. The other 2 courses are, you know, what about iMacs? And then the last 2 courses are, you know, what about the perpetually, you know, ignored Mac Pro and Mac Mini? So I think part of the harshness of the criticism over the MacBooks was, I think people were expecting more, and that just became the lightning rod for all their criticism. I think, you know, I think it was. I think the products were great. I really think they're beautiful, and you know, it's not one for everybody. A lot of the creative people I know, if they're doing predominantly photography, you know, they love them. You know, they're small, they're thin, you know, they have much faster processor. If they're doing video, then, you know, frankly, they're a little upset because 2 reasons. You know, number one, they don't believe in dongles. You know, dongle hell is just a mess. And, you know, number 2, in very much parts of that business, time is money. So they're looking at CPU power and rendering time. And, you know, if Adobe software running on some of the Dell or HP boxes is 3 or 4 times faster than Apple, as much as they might prefer, you know, to work on Apple, they're just being forced and crowbarred away into competitive space. So I think that's a market. It's not clear if Apple's ambivalent or not about it, but it seems by doing it with their pro apps, it seems they're just, you know, sending a soft signal that we don't care about the pros anymore. And ultimately, as we were saying this, you know, as Jeff was saying earlier on, Apple very rarely, you know, comments on anything it's doing, especially if it's redeploying and redirecting. But if you look at product line decisions for a product line company, I think that is probably the strongest signal, you know, that there is about what their intent.
So, Mark, you nailed, I think, what the real concern should be about Apple. And it isn't, are they streamlining product lines? It's what's going on in the pro market. And since Apple doesn't telegraph what they're doing, we have people making the assumption today that Apple is out of the pro space.
Right.
And I think, and I know it's going to sound crazy, I think we're premature making that assumption. I think that we need to see what happens over 2017. And if we haven't seen anything over 2017 that shows us that Apple does have a significant commitment to the pro market, and by that I mean we need a new Mac Pro, and it needs to be something that's not the little enclosed cylinder that you really can't upgrade. It needs to be a real pro machine. And if we don't see that by the end of 2017, then I'm willing at that point to say, yeah, Apple has abandoned the pro space. Well, at least part of the pro space, because the MacBook Pro is a very capable professional machine. It's just not the capable professional machine for everything you need to do.
And therein lies, I think, Apple's difficulty, and therein lies, maybe we're just guilty by the company we keep of just dealing with people who are really working at a high end, and they need much more powerful gear. And I think Apple is probably sending confusing messages, because on one hand, I don't think they want to walk away from them, but on the other hand, they recognize that they can't support everything they need. So intrinsically, it's a difficult. They're over a barrel. It's a hard decision for them to make.
Sure. And part of the mixed message we're getting is that, the new MacBook Pro is totally fine for video editing. And so, the video they showed during that keynote where they showed the new MacBook Pro in use. Mm-hmm. And there was the point in the video where you see this woman who's in a wheelchair, and she has to do all of her computer interaction with facial movement. Mm-hmm. And she's editing in Final Cut Pro on a MacBook Pro with 2 5K displays hooked up to it, and it's working perfectly. Okay, that's a powerful and compelling statement to say, yeah, this is a serious pro machine, even for video editors. And look, you don't even have to have the use of your hands to use this professionally. I mean, that was a really compelling image.
Yeah, so I don't disagree with that, Jeff, but all the video guys I know, they talk about that, they have all sorts of other bits, right? They need something more than just a machine they edit on. They need something out in the field. Ingest, they need to ingest from either cards, or whether coming stills from a camera or from a video machine, they need to ingest. They have all sorts of other peripherals and displays they need to drive. So that's why, like you said, the real test point will be: does Apple launch an expandable machine that can accommodate them? They should really bring back the cheese grater, and this trash can was a nice idea, but
the trash can, I think, is a great idea for a consumer desktop.
It is a great idea well, actually, no, I disagree. I think, why that instead of just an iMac? Especially now, the iMacs are faster than that.
That's true.
Circle. Yeah. So, but I think really what the pros need is something expandable, and it would be interesting if you're hearing this, but I'm hearing from creative people in on the East Coast and down in Florida and LA that the cheese grater enclosures they sell at a premium, because people can buy that upgrade, and they can do a processor upgrade and a RAM upgrade and outfit it with SSDs, and it blows the pants off of the thing that Apple is selling as their Mac Pro today.
Yep, I'm hearing 2 things, and one is exactly what you just said. People are buying up the old cheese graters at a premium.
Yes.
And the other thing I'm hearing is people are abandoning the Mac and going to HP's Z series workstations, which, I mean, they're not pretty, but holy crap, are they powerful.
Right.
Okay, I want to get in on this a little bit. First of all, Apple just did a fairly nice upgrade to Final Cut. Mm-hmm. Apple has provided Touch Bar support for Final Cut. That is, I don't have one in hand yet. I just got my notice. Mine is shipping, but
mine is too.
Okay, well then Jeff will be back soon on another show to talk about the MacBook Pros.
Awesome.
But the idea that I think they are showing some support for the Pros. Now we have it pretty well established why the MacBook Pros only go up to 16 gigs. Apple had to make a decision one way or another. You can argue with that decision, but it's a decision that makes sense. It may not be the one you would have made, but it makes perfect sense. The other thing, too, is that I see the Macs, whether it's an iMac or a MacBook Pro, as an editing machine. I don't see it as a render farm machine. Now I know that some people, depending on the level of production, may not have the luxury of having a render farm or dedicated render machines. But I don't think the Macs are that, at this point, the 5K or the new MacBook Pro, from everything I'm reading from video editors, is that much of a terrible compromise machine. So I think I took the Final Cut Pro upgrade to be a bit of a signal that no, we are still absolutely interested. I'm like you guys. I hope that the hardware backs it up moving forward, because we definitely need that for the people that Mark's talking about that are going out and retrofitting the cheese graters to something with a little more modern insides.
Right. Let alone the so-called Hackintosh movement, which I know some people here in the video folks in the Bay Area who have done that, but I don't know how much of a trend that is nationwide, of people going out, getting third-party gear and, force fitting, OS 10 or now Mac OS, onto it, which, I think is, again, it's sort of, it's piracy, right? You're pirating the OS, but, they're kind of forced into it because they need higher performance.
Mark, I did want to take issue with one thing you said, and that was the dongle hell issue with the new MacBook Pros. I have a whole stack of dongles for my existing MacBook, and so I guess I don't see this as that big a deal. In fact, in some ways, I like the idea more with what they did with the new MacBook Pros, because now I have 4 ports that can accept pretty much anything I want to plug into them. They can become anything I want. I don't have to worry about whether do I have an Ethernet port on this or not. I can buy a dock or a multi-purpose dongle and have everything I want. Or if I want to, I can buy Apple's individual dongles. I can have power on the right side of my computer. I can have power on the left side of my computer. I can have two power sources coming in, and the MacBook Pro is smart enough to figure out which one is the better to charge it. I just see I think a lot has been made out of the dongle thing, and it just doesn't bother me, because I'm already carrying dongles. I would prefer, if I had a choice, not to spend another $100 in dongles, but if it's that big a deal to me, I'm going to get the dongle. I'm going to dedicate that dongle to that cable or that device, and that's going to be it. So am I just being accepting of the new world order, or
maybe a little bit? But again, I'm thinking of some of the video guys I know who, when they talk about on set, they used to appreciate the fact that with the Mac you have a card reader, just plug it in. It's having a dongle or having a card reader. It's one more thing to bring. It's one more point of failure of something that could go wrong. So you're right. The grand scheme of things, is probably a very small, but very needy and vocal part of the marketplace. I think also it would have been nicer had Apple actually partnered and brought on stage a breakout bar company. I think we saw something by Belkin, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think OWC also has one. I think had Apple brought somebody like that on stage, it would have legitimized it in many, and also would have been again another signal that yes, there are limits to what we think is appropriate for us to do, and we'll partner with others to bring you best-in-breed solutions.
I think that Apple would never even consider bringing a company like Belkin or OWC on stage to show off their dock, because doing so then implies that there's a deficit with the product, and Apple is apologizing on some level for selling us a product that doesn't have what we need. But look, we've already got a workaround for you. And I know some people would see it that way. Some people wouldn't see it that way. I think that's exactly how Apple would see it.
And they probably are justified in seeing it that way, because it shows at some level, in their, deep in their soul and their heart, they realize, that they are not doing as good a job as they possibly could be. But bringing somebody on stage is all in the telling, right? There's all sorts of ways to portray that. So whatever they feel internally, they could bring another partner on and point out the benefits that they get. And isn't this great? Because Thunderbolt 3 is such a fast bus that working with the XYZ company device, you can have gigabit Ethernet, you can have 10 gigabit Ethernet, you can have other Thunderbolt or USB ports or HDMI, outputs, all sorts of things. I mean, I think this is the sort of expandability that the market, different users need and require. While it's certainly true, I think the mainstream market that they're engineering these things for is becoming very quickly. I wouldn't say monoculture, but we're seeing, I think, between MacBooks and iMacs, I think we're and maybe even the Mac Mini. We're starting seeing things that dominate and cover the needs of easily 90, 95, 98% of the marketplace. So in a situation like that, it's incumbent on Apple, doing all these creatives bitching and moaning and making a loud noise because they're all out there in social media, or and in so doing, give HP a chance to get people hammering away and switching them over some of your gear. I don't think that's a competitive opening they need to make. I think it's just a matter of doing more stronger partnerships with other manufacturers.
I hope you're right. I guess I look at
some level. Sorry to interrupt, because at some level they're already doing that, right? And they have this Bandit Badge, made for iPod, made for iPhone, where you have to pass a certain level of spec review in order to get Apple's imprimatur to put on your product line. So they already have that germ of an idea in their company and their operations. They just need to expand it or, bring it back into what they're doing for the Hackintosh and not just make it solely an island in iOS.
No, I think that's a great, that's a really great point, that the germ is there, the precedent is there. I look at the MacBook Pro as a bit of a future-proof machine, because now I can plug anything. I'm not going to have an interface that's going to go stale on me anytime soon, like we saw with the MacBook, the USB 2 needing to go to USB 3, and then FireWire 400 to 800, and then the switch over to Thunderbolt. This one's going to stay there for a while, I would like to think, and so that anything can plug into it, and anything externally, and I would see this machine as hopefully having quite a bit longer life. Anybody, but to go back, and we just touched on Sal Soghoian. Anybody worried though that with some of these changes? I mean, is this Apple just focusing a little bit more on what it feels are its core businesses?
So I admit I met Sal once years ago, and in different contexts, very friendly, very helpful. Just navigate and network into other parts at Apple. So when I saw that, I mean, really, that was shocking to me. I was really surprised. And I went and checked all sorts of double places just to make sure that, something just wasn't a false rumor, and I don't know what to make of it. It's, there's more of a story there, but, it's really hard to tell, because I think AppleScript is just a horrible language, but some people are really passionate about it, and certainly we see other tools that maybe build on top of that leverage that capability. I think it's more important that they still open their apps so that if you have other programming languages of choice, you can automate and customize solutions. And I don't know if that's going away. I don't know how Sal closely was tied to either AppleScript or Automator versus some of these other technologies. I don't think all the facts are known on that, but I do think that again, I think it's one of these things that in my own experience, it's way back when. Remember that tool Quicksilver, and then all these other varieties of application launchers and things. I think they're the things that make you feel really passionate about the Mac, because it's a quick little shortcut that works just for you. That's impossible on a Windows machine. So I think that Apple risks losing that intangible sexiness and attractiveness if they decide to shut this down and ignore it like they have. Some of the product lines and Wi-Fi and displays, et cetera, we were talking about earlier.
Jeff, you were in MacTech when I guess this broke, and Sal,
I was
Sal
actually
there.
in the room when Sal made the announcement.
Yeah,
and
a big hush go over the crowd.
It was like the air was sucked out of the room, and every one of us had been punched in the stomach. I mean, the sadness was palpable. The shock was palpable. And it was really scary to hear Sal saying these things because those of us that were in the room, we know the things that Sal's been directly involved with. He is the champion of AppleScript. He's the champion of Automator. He is the champion of other scripting tools on the Mac. So that means like if you want to do shell scripts, Perl script, things like that, that's Sal that was making sure that we could do those things on the Mac. And I know that Apple would have killed AppleScript a few years ago if it were not for Sal pushing so hard to keep Apple scripting services alive. And with Sal gone, that means there is no one in the company anymore that will be pushing for these services. And I believe the reason there's no one in the company anymore is because Apple isn't interested in those services. Now, after Sal made his announcement, I wrote up my article real fast. A couple other people wrote articles real fast so that the world could know what was going on. The internet freaked out. And it's because there are a lot of businesses that are so heavily invested in needing AppleScript to do what they do on a daily basis. And so in one respect, AppleScript and other scripting tools are almost like a little niche market for Apple. But that market that needs those tools, they are dead in the water without them. So there's a lot of people that are really freaking out because their businesses may be screwed when AppleScript goes away. I mean,
Jeff,
I'm glad.
If
do you have any insight on how many engineers were working on supporting their various scripting product technologies?
No. From what I understand, it was like a handful of people. So, like a group small enough that you could go hang out at Starbucks together and it wouldn't look weird. Like that small of a group. But no one's actually said, Jeff, here's the exact number of engineers that Apple had. But it was a very small group. And I believe most of what was being done was passing right through Sal's hands.
I would believe that, yes.
Yeah. So with Sal out of the picture, that means that no one, as to the best of our knowledge, is going to be working on enhancing Apple scripting tools. Craig Federighi has said that Apple will continue to support them, but supporting and improving are not the same
different
thing.
Right.
I saw that. That was almost read like your classic non-denial denial. That Apple will continue to support. Nowhere was their word enhance. And actually, I thought there was one level of indirection. I don't think he said that they would support, but endeavor or work to support. So we're just coming out of a very political campaign, right? So everyone is particularly sensitive to parsing language and direct and indirect statement, clear and obfuscated statements.
Right.
I don't know. I want to believe that there's a grand plan, and I try to crawl into Tim Cook's head and to the rest of the Apple executives and say, okay, we are now a consumer company. We have some pro support, and I'm with Jeff. I think there's evidence there that we're going to continue to support the pro, but for the most part, we're a consumer-focused company. And what the grand plan is for all this, as much, and I've met Sal several times, and absolutely great guy. And AppleScript you can do some phenomenal things with, but it is a bit of a geeky tool. Let's face it. And so does a geeky tool have a place in a consumer-oriented company? I would argue that with Sal there, why didn't you just keep him and maintain it? But again, trying to get into that new mindset. So I'm fighting, I guess, just the battle that a lot of Mac users and Apple, old-time Apple users and fans are, that this evolution with Apple, we're not completely comfortable with it because we see things happening that the old Apple would never have done. But this is, I think, Mark, you started almost the show out by saying, this is the new Apple. And we've got to figure out exactly what it means to us and to everyone else going forward.
Chuck, one of the problems we have right now, which is directly playing into our concerns about Apple's roadmap, is that Apple is incredibly secretive about what they do, and this leads us right into what has become called Chaffin's razor. And this is something. So Brian Chaffin, he has this thing that he has said to me many times, which is, if something seems completely irrational, then the likelihood that we're missing a key piece of information is extremely high. And with that key piece of information, what was irrational now makes sense. And that's Chaffin's razor. So where we are right now is in a position where we are missing at least one piece of key information, and probably more. And if we had these pieces of information, what Apple is doing would make more sense, and we would probably be less likely to be really concerned. Well, unless we find out what they're doing is like completely off the wall and not something that we want to be part of anymore. So anyhow, I think we're in a phase where Chaffin's razor totally applies. There's key pieces of information that are missing that would make us understand better what Apple is doing and where they're going if we had that data.
And I credit you and Brian and everybody at the Mac Observer. You're one of the few operations that makes that a key point of your analysis, that there almost have to be some missing pieces of information, because some of these things just on the surface do not appear to make sense, and people are raising the alarm flag like, "Oh my God, the world, the world's coming to an end." And then 6 months from now, something happens like, "Oh yeah, okay, that makes sense." So I think that, and I'm glad we may end it there, because I think that's a great point to make. That we're reacting right now based on what we know. And we started out the show by saying this is not totally confirmed, although it appears to be pretty certain.
It's as close to confirmed as we can get.
Yeah.
Right. So again, just putting on my fact-based fiction writer hat. The thing about this is, Chuck, what was it, about 6 months ago? I think you had a show where it was you, it was Brian, Steve Sandy, and I, and that MacJury was deliberating about lack of progress of upgrades about processors into Hackintosh. And I think one of the surprising conclusion out of that show was that the general sense was, it's being very deliberately done, and they're investing people in other projects and other resources. And because they are so secretive, we'll only know with time and retrospect if they've done the right thing. And, that could be next year. It could be 5 years from now. We just don't know. And, until then, I think it's anytime you see a headline that Apple must do, it's one of these things that's probably not worth reading, because it's somebody, with an opinion just spouting.
Yes, and what they should do is change their headline from "Apple must do whatever it is" to "I really want Apple to do this one thing for me."
Right. That would be better translation.
Yes, yes, because otherwise they just come out and the pundits that are just pronouncing this and that about the Touch Bar, about the MacBook Pros, about the Mac Pro, and all, with authority, they're missing pieces of information too.
Especially some of them who are opining before they even had any hands-on experience.
Yes.
I was holding out passing judgment on the new MacBook Pro, even though I bought one sight unseen, until I had a chance to actually play with one. Someone had one at MacTech conference last week and let me play with it for a few minutes. Mm-hmm. And after spending 5 minutes with it, I am champing at the bit for mine to show up. I can't wait to get that Touch Bar MacBook Pro in my hands. I mean, I was really impressed with it for the few minutes that I had to play with it.
Well, like I said before, Jeff, when yours gets there, when mine gets here, we both have a couple of days to work with it. We'll get you back and see if we can gather up anyone else that's gotten theirs.
I'm so in.
Yeah, this will be fun. Guys, thank you. We're doing some of what we're criticizing others for doing. We're spouting off a little bit, but I also think that this group is a lot better equipped to look at things from a balanced perspective and discuss it instead of just blathering on about why they're right and everybody else is wrong. Jeff, where can folks find you when you're not here? I know we talked about it a little bit at the top of the show, but give us more detail.
All right. Well, you can find me at macobserver.com. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram. I am J Gamet, both places. You can find me on Gobs of Podcasts. And then, how about my personal blog, Fresh Brewed Tales, where I talk about the ridiculous things I see people do in coffee shops.
That's always the fun one. As if nothing else you do is fun. Jeff, thanks for being here, and I think you are being summoned. Somebody's hungry.
Well, actually, Nightshade has food, so I'm pretty sure that she wanted to be part of the show, and she's voicing her concerns about Apple's roadmap.
Well, next time we'll get a separate camera for Nightshade down at cat level, and then she can contribute.
We can do that.
Yes. I know you would, too. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me on. It's always a blast.
Mark, one more time, where should we send folks to contact you if they agree or disagree with your views?
Probably the quickest, if you want to have a public dialogue, is through Twitter. I'm at Mark Fuccio, MarkFuccio, all lowercase. Or you can contact me through LinkedIn.
Great. It's a pleasure as always. Thanks for sharing your wisdom. Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner.
Fact-based fiction.
Fact-based fiction.
Fact-based fiction.
I like it. Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is the MacJury on MacVoices. Hopefully we've given you a few things to think about, maybe tone down a bit of your alarm over what you were seeing, and we'll wait and see if we ever get the next few facts that we're missing. Until the next time, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes, links to subscribe, and to connect with Chuck on Twitter, Google+, Facebook, YouTube, Vimeo, SoundCloud, the MacVoices blog, the MacVoices Dispatch, our weekly newsletter, and on MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard that helps you do more with your Apple tech. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.